Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for another edition of FSHD Insights and Guidance. I'm here today with Robert Rosania, am I saying that?
That's right, you got that right.
And Robert is also an FSH patient who had a somewhat recent, the last 6 years or so, diagnosis of his FSH. And today we'd like to talk about coping mechanisms and adjustments that are necessary to grasp what this disease is all about and how to live your life and dealing with it.
The adjustments that you have to make.
So especially my onset was when I was 27, today I'm 58, but yours is much more recent. So why don't we start with your adjustments?
Yeah, okay. First and foremost is coming to terms with recognizing things that you can no longer do that you took for granted that you could do. Climbing this, taking stairs, getting up on a curb from a parking lot, getting up from a chair, getting up from a commode, falling, not knowing about what step is going to take you that you will fall. No advanced warning. And the anxiety, there's an emotional component here, certainly, right? That goes, and the fear that goes with that. When's the next shoe going to drop, so to speak?
You're going to notice here, we just did David Copperfield. We switched locations. We took a quick break for a bite. So, and then the sun has been moving. I think some of it is, for me at least, was the transition of how you interact and see the world. And I'll just give you some examples. There are many of them, but I'll give you some of the highlights, at least from my perspective. Is for people with normal mobility, which is the vast majority of people, right. Stairs are means of getting from one place to another. And you don't even think about it. You do the stairs. In fact, years ago, I used to do the Rocky thing, up the stairs to the art museum in Philadelphia. You know, you just do that thing. It's like, and I couldn't even imagine doing that today.
Right.
But and then you begin to when you see stairs as a barrier to getting from one place to another, as opposed to a pathway or curbs or things like that, you begin to look at the world entirely different, and you notice things that you wouldn't otherwise have noticed. So, and for me, you come to appreciate the things that people do for people with disabilities. When you go to a hotel, I'll notice if a commode is low or ADA higher. And I think to myself, why aren't all these higher? But you notice those little things. Do showers have little handles to hold on to? Right. Even not full out handicap, but rooms, or do the shower or the tubs that you could shower in, do they have things to grip your feet so they're not just slippery, which is really dangerous for guys like us who have stability issues. Those little things, handicap parking, which I used to, I was annoyed by it. You have 20 handicap spaces in any given store, but you appreciate those things now.
And you have a little more respect to keep them available for people that really need them.
Right, and yes, and I'm appreciative of the efforts by government, local, state, federal, that have put guidelines in for assuring mobility, because now you become one of those people. You look at people differently, I find. Frankly, in the past when I was healthy or mobile, I would see people in wheelchairs or walking canes, and I would tend to, I don't want to say look away, but almost like they're invisible to some respect. You know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe that's a level of discomfort, not knowing how to interact with somebody. How do you approach somebody? And when you see all of that, and you see it now through the eyes of somebody who's in that group, in that camp, that's a big change in and of itself. And I think that's an essential change, because to cope with something or to adjust, these are the things that you're reacting to.
Right.
So, so that's a big part of it, I think, and the other side of it as well, having people around you who appreciate that you're looking at the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
You must. Another example, flying into Las Vegas, the McCarran Airport. Some of the escalators are really fast moving. I used to love that. Hey, let's get from point A to point B. I love speed. Those things are treacherous now to step on. That first step, whew, and if you fell on an escalator and you hit your face on the edges, I mean, I can't even imagine. Scary. Elevators. I mean, Victoria and I went to an amusement park, Cedar Point, and they have access with elevators and ramps for handicapped people.
Nice.
And again, all those things really have a big thing. So when you start to interact with the world, and these are facilities that help people to be mobile for those who are challenged in that regard, it makes it easier.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure like you, I'd like to hear a little bit of your experience.
One of the biggest adjustments I had to make, obviously, was my physical activity. And coming from a very active bicycling lifestyle, everything in my life was surrounded by bicycles. Working in a bike shop, working on bikes by myself, or just riding long distances, something I love to do. So I had to make a big adjustment and let go of some things that I used to love. And how did I coped with that by changing to something else. Okay, I can't play guitar anymore because of my hands are too weak. I can't ride my bicycle like I used to. I was just as active, but now I change it to things that I can do, such as playing harmonica or my didgeridoo, or writing. Research. I do a lot of research now. So I've changed from more of physical activity probably to a more sedate, but it's what I can do and it's what makes me happy. And when I can get involved in something a little more active, like getting out and about, I do that pretty much every day. And I like to do a little bit of gardening. Spend a lot of time doing that. It's just you're going to make a lot of adjustments that you're going to hate. But you gotta do it, obviously, and it can be done by self-awareness, and you can also add, for me, the element of anti-anxiety medication, which helped me to get past some of those restrictions I was putting on myself. I wouldn't go outside as much. I wouldn't go in public as much.
And was that a feeling of self-consciousness?
Self-consciousness, and also I had really only one incident, I should say, that was kind of a game changer for me about FSH and just being disabled generally. I was on my way to the courthouse with a bunch of documents from work, and I was walking about a block to get to them. On the other side of the street was a young couple walking in the opposite direction and mocking my walking. They were imitating my walking.
Oh, geez.
And laughing. And
I'm sorry, that's brutal.
Yeah. But, and it still kind of bugs me today, but I decided at that point that this was very humiliating, but I'm not going to stop my life because of it. I'm not going to make that many changes with my life, especially not go out in public or do my job. I had to do that. So I turned to anti-anxiety medication after that. And for me, it works. My twin sister, who's been in a wheelchair much longer than I have, doesn't take any medication whatsoever. And she's very happy. So it just kind of depends on the person, personality. Check with your doctor, have them check other meds you might be on. See if there's something else that might be creating that anxiety. see a psychologist, psychiatrist if you need to. But
One thing I'll say about that most unfortunate event, and just to try to get human behavior, psychology behind it, is I think perhaps people mock what they don't understand, or they don't know how to cope with it. It overwhelms their ability, and so what do they fall back to? Maybe they fall back to something which gives them a sense of comfort, as much as that may sound insensitive, obviously, to you.
Right.
But, they're projecting because they're feeling better about themselves, or because they're just so uncomfortable.
I don't know, some people just, maybe they feel more empowered, or they just think
it's
funny.
it's more about them. And they're
That's true. It's more about them than
shortcomings.
what's going through you. But at the time, it was pretty humiliating for me. And I had really never experienced anything like that before. Luckily, I haven't ever experienced it since. Or at least I didn't notice it. The medication seemed to help me, and I still take it today.
You had also mentioned there was a period, and it's entirely understandable, and I can appreciate it, as anger or bitterness, and being irritable. And would you care to?
Yeah, good points, and thanks for bringing it up.
Sure.
Anger is natural when when the things you could do have been taken away from you. And so you get bitter about it, and it's like, it's not fair. This really pisses me off, and how come everyone else is normal and I'm not, But everyone's got something, I guarantee it. And you can change your attitude and not be angry. I mean, there's still days I am, I agree. I have to admit to that, but there are times when that anger is going to be out of control, and it's going to take over. And for myself, I wound up seeing a psychiatrist because of it. And they really helped me to kind of reconcile that.
Find a balance?
Yeah, find a balance, and it came down to, you need to reconcile that the world doesn't go the way you want it to, and things aren't always fair. So you need to reconcile reality with the way you think things ought to be.
Right.
And of course, I had other things that were adding to the anger at the time that I did this a few years back. But it happens with all of us, and I think it's a natural stage and process we go through as we're processing, dealing with what we have lost, what we used to, or we think we've lost,
Sure.
and the changes that we have to do. I hate change, like a lot of people, but it's inevitable and it's necessary. You learn so many different lessons because of the changes in your life too. Obviously, hopefully you become wiser, but it can change your perspective, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Everything you look at, especially when you're first diagnosed or first realizing, I should say, that you're being affected by something, and it's making you weaker, and all of a sudden the things you used to enjoy and do, and the barriers you used to overcome easily, are now big barriers.
To play off what you're saying, I mean, when you see people do activities or watching a movie, and I see people running up the stairs, I see things that people would never see, which is, these are things that I can't do. Every time I see those types of things, I can't do that. As much as I would love to do that now, I can't do it.
So the mentality is, I can't, or at least it was.
Yes, no question there's a degree, but I think a solution to the bitterness, and I'm glad you worked through that, although we all have our ups and downs, right, our good days and not so good days, is, I think a real antidote to that is to go to a children's ward of a hospital. Yeah. And see those unfortunate younger children, always that are less fortunate than ourselves. And then you thank God for the things that we do have. Because you look at those young children and the life that's robbed in any condition. And I think that gets you grounded.
and you learn to appreciate things, I think, a little more intensely or deeply.
Another component too is using tools to assist. So my period right now is to adjust to accepting the fact that I may need to use a cane at certain times, at least,
Right.
in public.
And you're stubborn as hell about doing it, aren't you?
Yeah, but then, it's like, okay, do I get seen walking with a cane,
Yeah.
or do I get seen falling on the ground and not getting up? So which one's more humiliating? Which one would you rather?
Right.
You've seen a lot of people with canes.
Yeah.
You don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah.
How many people do you see on the ground that can't get up in public? Not too often.
Right.
So, and then you begin to style. I like to style, with a cane. You don't have to have an ugly cane. You can get a nice looking cane, if there's such a thing, and use it with style.
That's right.
Like the Englishman in New York who's walking with his cane
Right.
or something like that. So you stylize with it, and it becomes part of
The
extension of your
Ascot
personality.
Style. Yes, the Ascot style. I use a tall walking stick instead of a cane, but I was particular about it as well. It had to be adjustable. It had to look a certain way,
Yeah.
and it had to be sturdy enough. And I don't think it would ever supported me, but it was just more of a security connection for me, a little security blanket for me to feel a little more stable, out and about, because I had that waddle that we all have walking. And so I just felt a lot more secure with it. And then I graduated from I wouldn't say graduated, but I adjusted from the cane to AFOs, ankle foot orthotics. It just gives you a little more bounce to your step. It's incredible. A lot of folks only use one AFO on their weakest leg, and that's what I started with, but I did go to two eventually later, and it really made my life a lot easier while I was walking. But it was really helpful, and I think it extended my time to be independent.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend that. And then it went from the AFOs into a three-wheeled scooter, and then from a scooter into the wheelchair. And that's how things are today.
Right.
And actually, at the beginning, it was just a part-time use of the wheelchair, and only about a little over a year ago, I went to full-time in a wheelchair. So it's been quite a journey, but you cope with it. Yeah, you're a little sad. You get over it. You move on.
Right. The other thing I realized too is there was a time when I wouldn't, God forbid, I wouldn't ever let myself go into a wheelchair. I'm not going to be around for that.
You're probably right. Your progression has come on pretty late in your life, actually. Your onset was
just around with the leg
48
wobble,
when
right.
he was 48. So he's been into this for about 6 years now, and actually, remarkably, you've done well. I think you have a pretty positive attitude about most of it.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, and this is important for anybody going through a life change for whatever reason, I think, is despite all of the changes or the challenges or the adjustments that one has to make in life, one thing is really important is you are still you. You take you with you as this journey goes. You're still you inside, so you physically may have some limitations, of course, but you're still you. And God, thank God it's not dementia or Alzheimer's or something, or that is a truly, terrible thing. So my nature is tend to joke and make light of everything, that I don't take life that seriously. I try not to, or any condition. And one of the things that I do to help, I think, me cope, and really for other people who interact with me, I like to step out of myself, because it's so easy. We talk about this poor me, or everything's happening to me. Why me? Everything is me. The reality is there's everybody else, and there's everything else.
It's not always about you.
Right, and it's actually better to step outside of yourself, I think, in many ways. And one of the things I think that helps is the effort of making people feel more comfortable being with you. And when you're light about things, people are light. You it's not a heavy burden. And it just makes it much easier on the people with whom you know or don't know. And then, it comes back to you. So it just, you don't feel that you have your disability anymore. You're just interacting at a very personal level with people.
So humor is one of your coping mechanisms.
Yeah, or I think it's just my nature too.
That's your nature too. Okay.
So, but I think it can serve to that, not to be so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
When you see these challenges now with the stairs or the curves, you see other people too, and that's another important thing that I've learned or evolved. Other people that are in wheelchairs or have disabilities, I'm much more open and engaging. Because I recognize there's a person behind that disability, that chair or that cane. And I think the other key thing is you don't let the condition define you.
Exactly.
You define your condition, not the other way around.
So there are several coping mechanisms and adjustments just to make sure you have a positive attitude, keep that going, and things will work out a lot better for dealing with it. So for FSHD Insights and Guidance, I'm Russ Kleve. Thanks for joining us.